wearing a plate and never doing anything or seeing anyone different. Fed up with getting old. Breathe deep, breathe deep. There'd be no bringing her back this time. Not like that summer when she ran away to May at Ilkley, and May had not wanted her, because she had married her smart young man, who travelled in light drapery goods, and kept a Morris Cowley and a girl to answer the doorbell, and taught May to look down on her mother, who lived in Chorley's Terrace, and wore a coarse apron when she cleaned her own doorstep. May didn't want her, and Tim was in Canada and he didn't want her, and Bob cared for nothing but Northern Union and dirt track racing and his pint at the Spinners' Arms. Nobody wanted her, and she was very sure that she did not want herself. Breathe deep, breathe deep. Only be quick, because she wanted to get away from the smoke and the fog and the scullery and the sight of her own sick, ugly, tired face in the looking-glass over the sink. Breathe deep, breathe deep. Long lungfuls of air, such as she had drawn when long ago she walked with Bob on the Hardrustcliffe esplanade, with the gulls blowing above their heads and the bandsmen in bright red jackets playing like mad. Then it had been a different tale, when she sold cigarettes and chocolates on a kiosk on the prom, and wore her hair puffed out over 3 separate pads, and a piece of blue tulle tied round her throat. She had been pretty then, wasp-waisted and elegant, and Bob had thought no end of her when he walked out with her, a great, handsome, well-set-up young fellow, a lad from the mills in the West Riding, with his pockets full of money to spend on holidays. But surely she ought to be losing consciousness. Surely it was time for her to have got away, for the singing in her ears was not the singing of angels. The darkness around her was not the gloom of the grave. Breathe deep. But she could not breathe deep when she was stifling, when her breath came in quick, panting gasps. If she opened her eyes, she still saw the black cavern of the oven and the unwashed cup and saucer beside the sink. The smell of gas was weaker, not stronger in the nostrils. She felt not less awake, but more so than when she had lain down. This was not death. This was not merciful sleep. This was not escape. There had been some mistake again. She was still in Chorley's Terrace. She was trapped, imprisoned, choking, ill. And she was going to be sick. She staggered to her knees and to her feet. She fumbled with trembling hands at the scullery door. She was out in the yard, breathing great gulps of the November air. She was deadly sick and ill and miserable. And she was alive. And then she realized that the gas had given out, for she ought to have put another shilling in the slot. And she came back into the house, panting and sobbing, seeking a shilling for the meter, because she could not endure to be fooled this time. She had failed. She had failed. She was always failing. Life had humiliated her. It was too much for her. Death had humiliated her, and was too much for her. She must find a shilling. But there was not a shilling in the pocket of her worn grey jersey, only a sixpence, 3 halfpennies and a threepenny bit. And there was not a shilling in the ornament on the mantelpiece, and she would have to go out, all sick and wild and giddy as she was, to borrow the price of her freedom. The fare out of Chorley's Terrace was 1 shilling, and she could not pay it without again putting herself under an obligation to this West Riding town. Then they would say afterwards, why, she hadn't even a shilling in the house to keep the gas on. She had to come to us to borrow a shilling. They would jeer at her as a muddler to the end. Besides, it was getting late. She was losing time, and if Bob came home too soon, and it was all to do over again, if they brought her round and dragged her into the courts and convicted her of attempted suicide, she couldn't bear it. She couldn't bear to live.